Welcome, my dear friends, to the true Koran. First of all, let me say, the Holy Koran is a highly scientific book and is indeed a holy scripture. But many learned Muslims, they actually hurt the teaching of the Koran when they want to prove that the Koran is scientific truth, and they give the wrong evidence. Therefore, let us begin here first with those argumentations that seem to prove that the Koran is scientific, but they don't. And then, when we spoke about that, we will prove that the Koran indeed is highly scientific, and that it is mostly misunderstood by especially learned Muslims and Imams. So now first, many learned Muslims argue, well, when they are asked, can you prove to me that the Quran is the word of God, or that it is really scientific? Then they say, well, it must be the word of God because it reveals things and scientific teachings that have not been known before. Then those people who argue, those dear Muslims, mostly learned Muslims, who argue like that, they already have a problem. Because the Book of Light teaches, for instance, the argumentation that in the Quran, embryology was taught or revealed for the first time. Then, of course, we have to answer with the Book of Light, that is not true. Prior to the teaching of embryology in the Quran, long ago, long prior to the Quran, there was that teaching. So let's go into details now. We talk here about the medical information on embryology and also the human development, which is described in the Quran. This development in the mother's womb. These teachings, more or less, are already known or have been known thousands of years prior to the Quran, but also in the Babylonian Emma Elish tablets. This is Babylonian pagan creation story, and that was repeated in the Quran much later. So it is borrowed from a pagan myth. God allegedly created from a drop of blood. This is directly copied from the 6th tablet of the Enuma Elish creation. I said before Emma, sorry. Enuma Elish creation story. Enuma Elish creation story. That's where it's copied from. Or that is where embryology was already revealed long before the Quran. And prior to that even, Egyptian teachings, ancient teachings, had long before revealed embryology also by own surgery and so forth. Now, to say that God created man from a drop of blood is, first of all, unscientific, because we know that that blood doesn't form in a human embryo until well after 14 days. The Book of Light teaches that prior to the physical evolution there was a etheric, very fine, refined evolution. And when the spiritual being anchors in the impregnated womb, it happens first on very fine matter, etheric structure, and then the physical comes. It repeats itself in the female womb, what is actually the evolution of the entire universe. First spiritual, then material, and returning to the spiritual. We are, thank God, on the ascending arc back to the source. Now, and when we talk about the heart, that is formed till the 20th day after birth. So, this is something where the learned Muslim friends are arguing, and they heard actually the Quran. They heard, because everybody who has a little knowledge comes and says, well, those tablets date back to 700 BC. And the bloodline story about 1800 BC. You see? And so we see also the correspondence with days of Genesis creation, which also is copied from these tablets. So therefore, we must watch out and think about, dear Muslim, learned Muslim friends, when you start such argumentation in favor as you think of the Quran, you heard the Quran. You heard the Quran. Now, let's go further. We see that, for instance, Greek material, a doctor named Galen, he lived about 150 AD. And he already teaches, and it's confirmed by Basim Musallam. He is director of the Center of Middle Eastern Studies, University of Cambridge. There we see the stages, I quote him, the stages of development which the Quran and Hadith established for believers agreed perfectly with Galen's scientific account, which means actually it was copied from there. Or, let's be cautious, careful. This teaching about embryology is not new in the Quran, but it was long before there. It was already taught. And there are tons of evidence about that. And so, we can see, for instance, Samuel Yehudi, a 2nd century Jewish physician, and he already taught these things, which he agrees that already existed thousands of years ago. You know? Then, learned Muslim friends argue, well, the Quran reveals that bones were before muscle. I quote Al-Baqarah 259. Look further at the bones, how we bring them together and clothe them with flesh. Dear friends, we teach that man was, prior to the physical state, was etheric, very refined material, you know, almost like shadows. And that the condensing process caused then the bones and everything else of today. But when the Quran says, or gives the impression, that there is first a forming of a skeleton and then clothed with muscle, then of course that is not true. We know even from the now physical body that that muscles and the cartilage, precursors of the bone, start forming from the somite at the same time. When we look at the end of the 8th week of the embryo, there are only few centers of ossification started, but the fetus is already capable of some muscular movement. So, also when the Quran claims that this is scientific, it is not. And you, my dear learned Muslim friends, heard the Quran when you say that, because medical embryology teaches at the 8th week post-fertilization, ribs are cartilaginous and muscles are present. And at this time, ossification would begin near the angle of the rib and spread along the shaft until it's reached the costal cartilage by the 4th month. Now, muscles would be capable of some movement at 8 weeks. But by 10 to 12 weeks, this capacity is much better developed. This is scientific truth to which the Book of Light agrees to the present state of development in humanity. But remember, we teach humanity was not always as it is now. We teach in the Book of Light humanity was sexless, was etheric, then condensing, then separating into sexes, and so forth and so on. In order to understand that, one would have to study the Book of Light or download a poster at no expense on allreligionsunited.com. Now, let's see. All the teachings that are claimed by learned Muslims to be first time in the Quran and to be scientific are first of all not first time, and secondly not always scientific. And yet, the Quran is a highly scientific book, but most Muslims don't understand the Quran. And they argue, well, do you speak Arabic? Dear friends, the truth must be possible in every language, you know. So, let's take a further look at where this knowledge about semen and menstrual blood and so forth was known long before the Quran. With Aristotle, it was known, you know, and so forth. Let's look at Indian medicine. There we find in the Vedas all these things described who are then in the Quran. Now let us interfere here with the Book of Light and explain, before we come to other errors or misunderstandings, even by learned Muslim men and women, about the Quran. When it says in the Quran, we created and so forth, that is correct. It's not only majestical, but it is Elohim. We teach in the Book of Light that mankind became thinking or mental bodies by the Manasaputras, that mankind received their bodies, the spiritual beings received their bodies from other entities, Elohim, whose karmic duty it was to give essence, astral essence for emotions, mental essence for thinking, and so forth and so on. So yes, we are furnished by many creators. That's the correct explanation for we. But we you as a being, as a true being, you are timeless, eternal, uncreated. You are God's spark. You are a monad, as we teach. And yes, you are furnished by different powers that may be called we. But there is no extra cosmic God who was all the time alone and then decides, well, I'm alone, I will create something. Then the creation doesn't turn out like God wanted it to be. And then he punishes the creation, or, in Christian teaching, sends his son to take the blame instead of him, God himself. All that teaching, dear friends, makes no sense. It was necessary. Even the wrong understanding of the Quran and of the Bible was necessary for 2,000 years of the, you could say, time of Pisces. That's why the fish was a symbol for the Christians. But now we are in the age of Aquarius. We are in the age of knowledge. And we are here to unite all religions in the world by explaining the true meaning of these religions, so they can be united, and they also can be practiced individually. We continue to be Muslims and Christians, everything, but now with the better understanding. This is the purpose of the Book of Light, and this is the purpose of those lectures here in the Book of Light section. Now, dear friends, we come to the claim and point that the Quran indeed is highly scientific and true if you read it with correct understanding. Let's look at Quran 2:29 and Quran 79:27 to 30. Quran 2:29, it says, "It is He who hath created for you all things that are on earth, Then he turned to the heaven and made them into 7 firmaments, skies. Now, what is the true meaning of that? The Book of Light teaches when the monad, the super spirit, the supermonad, the first emanation that leaves the source, the first light, touches matter, we call it mula prakriti, root matter. It parts matter into 7 layers. And all of these 7 are 7 folded again. That happens after a period of rest, of pralaya. Now, once the root matter is spread into 7 layers, why is that done? Because of the following God sparks, who then take over and continuing their existence from past cosmic existence prior to the cosmic rest. And so, this is why Jesus also said in the Bible, "In my Father's house are many mansions I have prepared." So what happens, according to Book of Light, is when the root spirit leaves the source, it splits or parts root matter into 7 layers to prepare for the ascent of the following God's parts. So therefore, Quran 2:29 is completely right when it says, "It is He who hath created for you all things that are on earth. Then He turned to the heaven and made them into 7 firmaments." Well, actually, this then should be done first, because at the reawakening of the universe, this is the first action that is done by the supermonad or by the root spirit. When it falls into matter, it parts matter into 7 layers. See? And then when you read that with that understanding, this is why we have the Book of Light, to unite all religions. And we also say God is not a He, it's more or less an it, it's an energy that leaves the source. But truth is in the source. Everything that leaves the source is driven by desire. So the one who overcomes desire for heaven, earth or hell will rest in the source. Now let's look at Quran 79:27-30. Are you the harder to create, or is the heaven that He built? He raised the height thereof and ordered it. And He has made dark the night thereof, and He brought forth the morning thereof. And after that He spread, flattened is the correct translation, the earth. From that, many Muslims even think the earth is flat. It's not. It's not. It is just a reawakening of that first root spirit, who then splits root matter into 7 layers. Of course, in order to understand that, one would have to study the Book of Light, or download that poster, Book of Light poster, at no expense, where all the teaching is presented in one view. Now, let's see where the Quran is also completely right, if correctly understood. If not understood, even the highest learned imam will fall, will be laughed at by scientists, will be laughed at by others, because he doesn't know the true meaning. And you see, dear friends, this is why we are here. We want to clean all religions from the misunderstanding and from a not literally to be taken definition. If you take Quran and a Bible literally, you are in big trouble. And this is the reason for the religious wars. And this is why we have the Book of Light. We read in Quran 18:68, till when he, the traveler, Zulkarnain, reached the setting place of the sun, he found it going down into a muddy spring. Well, some say, they believe the sun is rising, and which is not true. The sun is in the center, and so forth. And then in Quran 1890, we reach till when he reached the rising place of the sun, which is of course dangerous to say because the sun is not rising. He found it rising on a people for whom we had appointed no shelter from it. Well, the sun doesn't rise and fall. You see, dear Muslims, how you will have a problem there. And when you say in the Quran 36:38, and the sun runneth unto a resting place for him, that is the measuring of the mighty, the wise, the sun doesn't run, so to speak. It's in the center. In Quran 36:39 we read, and for the moon we have appointed mentions till she returned like an old shriveled palm leaf. Now that is very interesting and highly scientifically true. Dear friends, the moon is an old shriveled palm leaf because the moon is mother of the earth, teaches the Book of Light. The moon is the dead mother of the earth, or dying mother of the earth, because when a planet dies, it leaves its energy, projects to a new point of energy, and the new planet arises, and the old planet becomes the moon of the newborn. So there is highly scientific truth in that part of the Quran when it says, and for the moon we have appointed mentions till she return like an old shriveled palm leaf. And this is exactly, if understood perfectly, that the moon is much older than the earth. See? If you understand it correctly. Quran 36:40. It is not for sun to overtake the moon, nor doth the night outstrip the day. They float each in an orbit. That's correct. Perfectly correct. See, and when some scientists laugh about it, they don't understand, like many Muslim imams don't understand the Quran. You know? Now, some, and I will defend now Quran, with the Book of Light. We read in Quran 67:5, and we have, from of old, adorned the lowest heaven with lamps, and we have made such lamps as missiles to drive away Satans. You know. Well, we read then in Quran 37:6-8, we have indeed decorated the lower heaven with beauty in the stars, and for guard against all obstinate rebellious Satans. So they should, or shaitans, they should not strain their ears in the direction of the exalted assembly, but be cast away from every side. Well, dear friends, that is of course a problem, and many critics could start laughing now, but basically what it says is, when there is manifestation, spirit falls into matter. And matter is shaitan, is Satan. All, we teach from the Book of Light, all material world is the realm of Satan. And from that point of view, you could see that indeed it is the constant fight of spirit against matter, in which spirit evolves and is aware itself being godlike. And by that friction, we can say that that there is a Satan, an adversary. That word Satan is from the Sanskrit, Satan. I teach Sanskrit in the Book of Light. You can also see on allreligionsunited.com the Sanskrit teachings, which is a much older language than anything else. Now, science argues, is heaven a roof over the earth? Because in Quran 21:32 we read, and we have made the sky a roof withheld from them, yet they turn away from its portents. Or in Quran 31:10 we read, he hath created the heavens without supports, that we can see, and hath cast into the earth firm mountain hills, so that it quake not with you, and he hath dispersed. Now, dear friends, who has made the earth your couch and the heavens your canopy? All that is still, when literally taking, very simple and for most scientists not true. But when we read in Quran 78:19, and the heavens shall be broken as if there were doors open, or when the sky is cleft asunder, and the sky will be rent asunder, for it will that day be flimsy of, when the stars fall, losing their luster. Now, what is the luster of a star or of any planet? It is Laya, teaches the Book of Light. It is that point, that center point, into which a dying planet manifests to reincarnate in a new planet. And Muslims don't understand that, and they don't understand their own Quran, which teaches reincarnation. Dear friends, we will come to that. That the Quran teaches reincarnation. You just have to read it with a correct understanding. Now, when we come to Quran 31:29, the question arises if the sun rotates around the earth. It says there, seest thou not that Allah merges night into day and He merges day into night. That He has subjected the sun and moon to His law, each running its course for a time appointed, which is completely correct. It counts for every planet, it counts for the entire universe. The Book of Light teaches the entire universe is 311 trillion, 40 billion years of activity, and then it is drawn again into the source, into the refuge, into nirvana. And about over 150 billion years of that time have passed already, so we are, thank God, thank Allah, on the ascending arc. Now in Quran 21:33, we read, "It is He who created the night and day, and the sun and moon and each of them swim along in its own course." Why not? We teach that everything swims in ether. Ether. We may say, oh, there's no ether. Einstein said there's no ether because we don't need it. Well, the Book of Light teaches there's nothing else but ether, in different degrees of density. Now, when it says in Quran 21:33 that the sun and moon float, which is correct, floats in ether. See, but you have to read it with the right understanding. It says, and this is why some Muslims even think, and scholars think, the earth is flat. In Quran 15:19 it says, "And the earth we have spread out like a carpet, set thereon mountains firm and immovable." See, this is, of course, a misunderstanding, because mountains are neither firm nor immovable. Mountains will be valleys, and valleys will be mountains. The earth is constantly moving. So you see, there are really some scientific untruth in the Quran. But this is according also to the hadiths and so forth, where these people were very simple-minded people, and they didn't understand. And so they said, well, I see what I see, and I believe what I believe. But that's when they are, so to speak, a victim of laughter. We see in Quran 87:6-7, "Have we not made the earth as a wide expanse and the mountains as packs anchor?" No, it didn't happen that way. Because the Book of Light teaches prior to physical evolution, there was a fine, refined, etheric, spiritual evolution. And then everything condensed. And then you can say there are mountains. But even then there are no mountains because those mountains will be valleys, and those valleys will be mountains since earth is moving constantly. So there you can understand the teaching of the Book of Light. You want to look for evidence of past existences and civilizations. Look in the mountains. They were once valleys. So we spoke about that created from clotted blood. We don't have to go back to that. Now, the Quran, of course, then the people, they were afraid because they in themselves felt something that we teach here is not true and has to be believed on belief, has to be accepted on belief. See, this is why the Book of Light is here, because those people desperately fight against unbelievers, actually, because they somehow feel that which they believe is so not accurate. This is why we have the Book of Light. Quran 9:29 says, "Fight those who do not profess the true faith." See, this is a problem. Yeah? Till they pay the poll tax. Somebody who wants to force his religion on others, his belief, is unsure of his belief. And this insecurity makes him unhappy, unbalanced, aggressive. A teaching, a religion, let's say law, or a religious scripture, or a religious thesis that you have to beat or force onto somebody is not worth the paper it is written on. So beware, dear Muslims. Don't fight too much. The more you fight, you actually fight against your own more and more growing opinion. It may not right what you believe it. This is why we have the Book of Light. We see all these. The Quran says there is no compulsion in religion, and then it says fight. You see, this is your own insecurity. Glory to the Book of Light that helps us to understand Quran and Bible and all other religions and reveals to us their common core so they can continue to live their religion, but now with a better understanding. You cannot say there is no compulsion in religion in Quran 2:56, when in Quran 9:29 you say, fight those who do not profess the true faith, Islam, till they pay the poll tax, jizya, with the hand of humility. No. Won't work this way, dear friends. Did you know that Buddhism is the only religion that was spread without violence, no matter how much they fight? No, but it was spread with only logic. This is what the Book of Light does. Logic. When we read Quran 9:5, then, when the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters, wherever you find them, and take them captive and besiege them and prepare for them each ambush. Are you crazy to teach in Hadith or in Quran such a nonsense? You cannot say there is no compulsion in religion and then you contradict yourself, forcing. This is the cause, dear friends, of all religious wars in the world. They don't understand and they don't know their common core. This is the teaching in the Book of Light. See here, Quran 47:4. When you meet the unbelievers in the jihad, strike off their heads. Yeah, are you crazy? You cannot say you are against radical ISIS and then you teach that stuff. More and more people think then, well, you just say that because you wait until ISIS takes over and then you can take over too. Doesn't work that way. Karma will teach you. Dear friends, dear Muslims, understand that the Quran teaches karma and reincarnation. You will pay for everything, for every feeling you have, for every word you say, and for all of these things that you write here, you will pay when you follow them. You see in Quran 2:191, and slay, kill them wherever ye catch them, and turn them cut from where they have turned you out. Such is the reward of those who suppress faith. Such the reward of all of you radical Muslims will be that you will suffer in hell. Shaitan will take care personally of you. Don't do that. Quran 8:65, O apostle, rouse the believers to the fight of unbelievers. Come to your senses, dear Muslims, and honor the true holy Quran. You say Islam or the Quran as you understand it is a religion of peace, and there is no compulsion. And punishment of an apostate in Islam is, of course, death penalty. Yeah? Quran 44:58, verily, we have made this Quran easy in the tongue in order that they may give heed. You cannot force your stuff on others. We don't force it with the Book of Light too. We only appeal to logic. So, you got to watch out when you teach such contradictions in the Quran and then you escape to, well, do you speak Arabic? You must understand Arabic. No. You don't have to. Truth is possible in each language. And these are things, especially the last that I mentioned also, when you say there's no compulsion and then you say cut the heads of unbelievers, you are in big trouble, dear Muslim friends. You will pay karmically and reincarnative the price for such violent teaching that only brings suffering on mankind. Wake up, turn to the Book of Light, and then back to your Quran, and everything will be in harmony and peace.